What if I told you that right now, in this very moment, 5 prophets from the pages of Islamic history are still alive? Not as legends or distant memories, but walking somewhere on this earth, preserved by the will of Allah for a mission that will change the fate of the world. Hidden in the folds of time, awaiting the signal to step forward. These are not stories made to comfort children. They are truths carried in the Quran, in authentic hadith, and in the faith of believers for over 1,000 years. And once you hear their names and roles, you will never see history the same way again. Before we begin this journey across centuries and continents, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from, because the story you are about to hear belongs to every believer on earth. It begins in the quiet stretch of a desert night where the stars seem brighter than they should be. A stillness that feels unnatural, as if the air itself is holding its breath. Fact 1. In Islam, it is believed that 5 prophets are still alive today, preserved by the will of Allah for purposes that are not yet complete. And when you hear their names, you will realize they are not just fragments of ancient scripture, but living figures in our world's hidden story. We start with the first presence, not by his name yet, but by his mark in history. Imagine a man chosen before the time of the Great Flood, taken by Allah before death could claim him, raised into realms beyond human sight. This is no fairy tale, but a teaching passed through Quranic verses and the words of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. His life was long before yours, yet in the unseen it continues still. You may have passed through a place he once walked and never known it. And that is the point. Their existence is not for public spectacle, but for divine purpose. Fact 2. These prophets are not subject to the decay of time as we know it. Their bodies do not weaken, their spirits do not fade, for Allah has preserved them until the moments written for their reappearance. The Quran speaks of some of them directly, while hadith narrations fill in the tapestry with details only preserved through the care of scholars. The first of the 5 was a man who stood as a moral compass to his people when corruption seemed unstoppable. He lived with such righteousness that the Creator honored him with a gift no mortal could imagine, a life beyond death without passing through it. The second lives in a realm that is not entirely our own. His role is to move through the world in moments of great moral trial, guiding those destined to play a part in the unfolding divine plan. Fact 3. This is not speculation within Islamic tradition. The preservation of these prophets is tied to the unfolding of events leading to the final days, when their appearance or intervention will be part of the divine script. Picture a man walking along the shores of a river so ancient it predates civilizations, wearing garments no modern tailor could replicate, speaking a language only the pure of heart could understand. His name is whispered in different lands, yet he is recognized fully by none except those who have been guided to him. He drinks from waters that quench not only thirst, but the decay of time itself. Now the third among the 5 is the most well known to the modern world because his story has crossed religious boundaries. In Islam, it is firmly established that he was neither crucified nor killed, but was raised to the heavens, and his return will mark a critical turning point in history. This is not an allegory, but a specific prophecy, detailed in the Hadith, that his reappearance will be a direct confrontation with the forces of deception in the last age. For now, he remains in a place of divine keeping, awaiting the command that will send him back to the earth. Fact 4. The 4th prophet among them is described in Islamic sources as a man of deep knowledge, one whose wisdom was so profound that even a prophet of Allah was sent to learn from him. His life continues far from the public eye, but his presence is felt when the balance between truth and falsehood teeters too far. There are stories of him guiding travelers, solving problems that no human mind could solve, then disappearing without a trace. Such moments are part of a long and ongoing mission known only to Allah. And then there is the fifth. His identity surprises those unfamiliar with deeper Islamic tradition because his life straddles the boundaries between prophet, king, and conqueror. His story includes journeys to the far reaches of the earth, to lands where the sun rises upon people with no shelter from it, and where barriers were built to contain forces that will one day be released. His continued existence is not widely discussed in casual conversation, yet in scholarly discourse, his preservation is part of the same divine mystery that holds the others. Fact 5. The preservation of these prophets serves multiple purposes. First, as living signs for humanity, even if unseen. Second, as key players in the events that will lead to the Day of Judgment. And third, as proof that the will of Allah transcends the physical laws we take for granted. These 5 are reminders that time is not a prison for those whom Allah chooses to free from it. Imagine being one of them, watching empires rise and crumble, inventions transform the world, nations forget their pasts, and yet you remain exactly as you were. That perspective alone changes the meaning of patience, endurance, and faith. Their mystery is amplified by the fact that their whereabouts are unknown. Some say the first dwells in the heavens. Some say the second roams the earth unseen, appearing only to those whose destiny is to meet him. The third remains in the highest realm, beyond the reach of human eyes, until the appointed hour. The fourth could be anywhere in the world, blending seamlessly into daily life when needed. The fifth could be in a place so remote that modern maps have no name for it. This uncertainty is not a flaw in the story. It is the design, for their preservation is not for curiosity but for divine mission. Fact 6. Islamic scholarship emphasizes that these prophets' continued life does not mean they interact with the living in casual ways. Their missions are precise, their actions rare, and their presence always aligned with divine instruction. They are not here to solve every problem of humanity, but to fulfill specific tasks that have been written since before the earth itself was formed. The true depth of their lives cannot be fully comprehended because it is tied to the unseen. And so our journey begins here, with the acknowledgement that the world is not as empty of divine figures as it might seem. Even now, as you listen, they may be standing on a distant mountain, walking through a crowded market, or praying in a place untouched by human noise. We may never know until their roles require that they step forward, and when that day comes, it will shake the certainty of every living soul. The mystery is not just that they are alive, it is why they are alive, and that answer will unfold only in the chapters to come. Night had fallen over a valley that looked untouched by centuries. The kind of place where shadows stretch endlessly and the wind feels like it carries memories instead of air. Fact 1. In Islamic belief, some of these prophets have roles tied directly to the events of the last day, and one among them will walk the earth again before that moment arrives. His mission will not be symbolic, but physical and decisive. Imagine a man stepping into a world unprepared for what he carries. A man who has not aged a day in over 2,000 years yet, whose eyes hold the weight of every generation that has passed. His return is not a matter of chance, but a decree already written in the preserved tablet known as Al-Law, Al-Mahfuz. Somewhere far from cities and lights, he waits. Not in a deep sleep, not in the kind of waiting that makes time heavy, but in the awareness that his re-entry into the world will change its course. Fact 2. The Quran confirms that certain individuals were taken alive by the command of Allah, lifted beyond the reach of death, and held in places we cannot reach. This prophet is one of them. He lived among a people who had wandered from the truth, and his task was to guide them back. When they rejected him, the divine command lifted him away, not to remove him forever, but to reserve him for the final conflict between truth and deception. Picture him walking again, not as a spirit or a vision, but in flesh and blood, standing before crowds who do not believe what they are seeing. Fact 3. In the Hadith, it is narrated that his return will coincide with an age of false messiahs, and his role will be to confront the greatest deceiver humanity will ever face. This confrontation will not be poetic or hidden, it will be a public act that no one on earth will be able to ignore. Those who doubted the prophets will see one before their very eyes, and the illusion of worldly power will crumble. But his story is not just about his return. Fact 4. During his first life on earth, he performed miracles by the permission of Allah, healing the sick, restoring sight to the blind, and even bringing the dead back to life. Yet, despite such signs, many turned away. This rejection will mirror the disbelief of the last days, when miracles will not be enough to convince those whose hearts have been sealed. His patience then will be his patience again, but this time the outcome will be final. Some scholars describe his current state as one of preserved readiness. He does not live among us in the sense of daily routines or human needs as we know them, but he remains fully alive, able to return in the same body, the same form, with the same divine authority he carried before. Fact 5. This continuity of life is itself a sign for the believers, a living example that the command of Allah can suspend natural law at will. Time cannot claim one whom Allah protects. Now imagine what it would mean for you to see such a figure. No media trick, no historical reenactment, no guesswork, just the undeniable presence of a prophet in the modern world. Fact 6. The Hadith narrations describe that when he returns, he will descend wearing garments that seem untouched by the dust of earth, and his appearance will be so striking that people will recognize him even if they never saw him before. His presence will align perfectly with the moment the world most needs him. His journey back will not be solitary. In the last days, the unfolding of events will draw together others among the 5 who are still alive. Each will have a role, and theirs will intersect in ways humanity cannot predict. Fact 7. In Islamic eschatology, the cooperation between living prophets and chosen believers in the final era is a fulfillment of prophecies that span centuries. No action will be wasted, no step will be without meaning. You might ask where he is now. The truth is, no one alive can answer. Fact 8. Islamic tradition teaches that certain matters of the unseen are known only to Allah, and the exact locations of these prophets fall into that category. This secrecy ensures that their missions cannot be disrupted by human interference. What is known is that when the moment arrives, there will be no doubt. Until then, his existence serves as a silent anchor to the faith of those who believe. Somewhere beyond the reach of time, a prophet waits to step back into history's stage, and when he does, the world will be forced to choose between the fleeting comfort of falsehood and the enduring weight of truth. This is not just a story from the past, it is a countdown that continues even now, with every tick bringing us closer to the day he walks among us again. Somewhere in the far reaches of the earth, beyond deserts and mountains and forests untouched by human hands, there is said to be a river unlike any other, a river whose waters do not simply quench thirst, but preserve life itself. Fact 1. In Islamic tradition, there exists a prophet who drinks from a spring known as the water of life, and by the command of Allah, this sustenance has kept him alive for centuries. His name is spoken softly among scholars and seekers, for his story is not one of public speeches or vast armies, but of quiet, deliberate journeys. He is a man who moves unseen, appearing only when a soul is in desperate need of truth that no ordinary teacher can give. Fact 2. The Quran speaks of a meeting between this prophet and Prophet Musa, peace be upon him, where Musa was instructed to learn from him. This was not a meeting of equals in knowledge. This was the Creator sending one of his mightiest messengers to learn from another servant who carried wisdom hidden from most of humanity. That alone tells you the weight of his purpose. Picture a scene on the banks of a river, the mist curling above the surface, as if even the water guards its secret. A traveler approaches, not knowing who this figure truly is, only to be met with answers to questions they had not yet asked. Fact 3. The lessons given by this prophet are not just about rules or rituals, they are revelations about the unseen workings of Allah's will, events that seem unjust or confusing, but in truth are guided by divine wisdom beyond human sight. He does not remain in one place. Fact 4. Narrations describe him traveling the earth in ways that defy ordinary movement, sometimes appearing in a distant land only to vanish before anyone can follow. These journeys are not random. Each one serves a purpose written long ago, each encounter altering the course of a life, a family, or even a nation. The water from which he drinks is not a symbol, it is real. Fact 5. Islamic sources link his survival to the mercy of Allah, with this blessed spring being a means rather than the ultimate cause. By Allah's will, it sustains him without the decay that claims all other living things. Imagine the stillness of his existence, where centuries pass like seasons, and yet his body remains as it was in the time of Musa. His humility is unmatched. Fact 6. Despite his vast knowledge, he does not seek recognition or authority. His work is done in silence, his lessons remembered only by those who experience them. Even Prophet Musa, after his encounter, carried those moments as personal knowledge, not as public spectacle. This is why the identity of this prophet remains shrouded, because his mission is not to be found but to find those who must meet him. Now consider the implication. Somewhere right now, he could be walking along a street, boarding a ship, or sitting in the corner of a small gathering, unnoticed by all except the one person he has come to guide. Fact 7. There are accounts among some scholars of mysterious strangers who appeared, solved an impossible problem, and then disappeared without trace. While not every story can be verified, the possibility keeps alive the awareness that divine intervention can take human form without warning. And what of his connection to the other living prophets? Fact 8. In the grand design of the end times, his role will be one of guidance, preparing certain individuals for what is to come. He will not lead armies or address nations, but the ones he guides will carry out tasks that affect the entire world. His contribution is hidden but essential. The water of life he drinks from is said to flow in a place unreachable to most. No map marks it. No explorer has returned with its location. Fact 9. The protection of this spring is part of divine will, ensuring it cannot be exploited or desecrated. It exists for him alone, because his mission requires his survival. If you stand beside a flowing river and watch the current, you might think of him. Somewhere, beyond your sight, the one who drinks from the water of life still walks the earth, guided only by Allah's command. And when the appointed time comes, he will step into the events of the final age with the same quiet precision that has marked his centuries of life, changing the world not through noise but through the power of truth perfectly timed. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world feels half asleep and even the wind seems to hesitate, there is a figure whose life is hidden in plain sight. A prophet who walks the earth with a mission so rare that only a handful in history have known it. Fact 1. In Islamic tradition, this prophet was among those sent to a people who had turned completely away from the truth, and when his time came to leave, Allah preserved him without death, keeping him alive for a future that has not yet arrived. He is not in exile, not in hiding in the sense we imagine, but in a state of divine preservation that allows him to appear and vanish according to the will of Allah. He has been called a silent guardian, not because he refuses to speak, but because his work is done without the noise of public recognition. Fact 2. Narrations suggest that his role in the end times will be to stand beside another prophet during the final trials of humanity, offering unwavering support and reinforcing the truth in the face of overwhelming deception. This is not the task of a messenger delivering a new revelation, but of one who strengthens what has already been revealed. Imagine meeting a man whose presence feels heavier than the room he stands in, whose eyes hold a depth you cannot explain. Fact 3. Accounts in Islamic history describe him as a figure of endurance, one who has carried the same body through centuries, witnessing the slow turn of history without losing clarity of purpose. His patience is not just a personal virtue, it is a requirement for the role he has been given. The place where he spends his time is unknown. Fact 4. Unlike others among the 5 who might travel widely, his life may be tied to specific locations, places of worship, or regions that hold significance in the unfolding divine plan. His absence from the world stage is not an accident, it is part of the design to keep his presence undiscovered until the moment it must be revealed. His connection to the living is rare but powerful. Fact 5. There are stories of righteous people who, in moments of deep crisis, encountered a man who gave them words that changed their path entirely. In these accounts, the stranger left before any thanks could be given, and only years later did they realize who he might have been. While such reports cannot be confirmed, they align with the nature of his mission, targeted, timely, and unseen by most. He is not a wanderer without direction. Fact 6. Everything about his preserved life is linked to a precise timeline, a sequence of events that must unfold exactly as decreed. When the false Messiah appears in the end times, he will stand among the forces of truth, lending not just his presence, but his prophetic authority to the side of righteousness. This alliance between him and the others still alive will be a turning point in the final era. Consider what it means to wait for centuries for a single moment. Fact 7. His preservation is not simply to prolong life, but to ensure he is present when the stakes are highest in human history. His patience is a lesson in itself, reminder that divine timing does not bend to human schedules. He may be closer than anyone suspects. Fact 8. Some scholars believe that Allah allows such figures to live in forms and locations that make them indistinguishable from ordinary people until their work demands otherwise. In this way, the world remains unaware, but the appointed moment is never missed. His story is a thread in the larger fabric of the mystery of the 5. Each has a role, but his is perhaps the most understated yet no less critical. Without him, the chain of divine support in the last days would be incomplete. Somewhere now, he stands watch over a world that does not know him, carrying a mission that will one day shake the certainty of those who believe they control the course of history. There is a story in Islamic tradition of a ruler unlike any other, a man whose authority stretched from the rising of the sun to its setting, whose reign was marked not by oppression but by justice guided by revelation. And in the depths of that story lies the 5th among the prophets still alive. Fact 1. This figure is often remembered for his great journeys to the farthest edges of the earth, building structures and barriers that stand even now, unseen or forgotten by most of humanity. His life was not one of stillness. He moved with purpose across lands and peoples, ensuring that the commands of Allah were carried out over territories vast beyond imagination. Fact 2. The Quran recounts how he traveled to regions where the sun rose upon people with no shelter from it, and to another place where a community sought his help against the threat of the tribes of Yajuj and Majuj, known in English as Gog and Magog. These were forces of corruption and destruction, and by Allah's permission, he built a barrier so strong that it would hold them back until the end times. That barrier was not merely a wall of stone, and Iran, it was a symbol of divine protection placed through his hands. His authority was unique because it was both worldly and spiritual. Fact 3. Unlike kings who rule by force, his power was recognized as coming directly from Allah, granting him not just armies, but the moral legitimacy to lead entire nations. The people he encountered were as varied as the landscapes he crossed. Some welcomed him, others resisted, but all came to see that his rule was different from the empires that rose and fell around them. His preservation is perhaps the most astonishing, for it means that a ruler from ancient history still lives. Fact 4. While the details of his continued life are known only to Allah, Islamic scholars agree that his mission is not over. The barrier he built will one day be broken, and on that day he will have a role to play in the unfolding events of the final age. Whether that role is to rebuild, to guide, or to confront, only the divine plan will reveal. Fact 5. His journeys are described in the Quran not as conquests for wealth, but as missions for justice, bringing relief to oppressed people and ensuring that the laws of Allah were upheld. Imagine a ruler who could stand at the highest point of a mountain pass and see not just the land before him, but the hearts of the people within it. His decisions were not based on political gain, but on the balance of truth over falsehood. Some believe he walks even now, not seated on a throne, but moving among people as an ordinary man, carrying the knowledge of places long forgotten. Fact 6. If he is hidden, it is by divine choice, for his reappearance will coincide with one of the most catastrophic events in human history, the release of Gog and Magog. Their emergence will overwhelm human defenses, and only divine decree will bring about their end. His presence in that time will be a sign as clear as the rising sun. His leadership was not bound to a single nation. Fact 7. His travels took him across civilizations, and each encounter was shaped by dialogue, understanding, and the enforcement of justice. Even those who did not share his faith recognized his fairness, a quality that remains central to why his story continues to inspire. If you imagine the weight of carrying such authority for centuries, you begin to understand why his preservation matters. Fact 8. His survival across time means that when the final trials come, the world will see leadership as it was meant to be rooted in service to Allah, not in self-interest. His return will not be to claim a crown, but to fulfill the last chapter of his duty. Somewhere now, the king who once touched the edges of the earth waits. Perhaps he stands on a high ridge watching a land that has forgotten him, or perhaps he walks through a city unnoticed, his steps as steady as they were in the days when empires sought his guidance. His story is proof that the divine plan can hold a leader in reserve for the moment when humanity most needs to see what righteous rule truly looks like. The sky was heavy that evening, a deep crimson bleeding into the horizon as if the world itself knew a turning point was near. And somewhere far beyond the reach of ordinary life, one of the five moved closer to the moment written for him since the dawn of creation. Fact 1. In Islamic belief, the return of one particular prophet will mark the collapse of falsehood's final empire. His descent will not be gradual but sudden, witnessed by believers across the world, and his mission will be to restore truth exactly as it was revealed. Fact 2. This prophet was taken alive, spared from death, and preserved in a state of perfect readiness. He does not slumber in the way we imagine sleep, nor does he wander aimlessly. His existence now is one of preparation, waiting for the divine command that will send him back into the flow of human history. When that moment comes, the deception of the false Messiah will be exposed, and the world will witness a confrontation unlike any in its past. Picture the scene foretold in authentic hadith. The false Messiah is moving with speed across the earth, spreading lies that bend reality itself, and humanity is trapped in a haze of confusion and fear. Then, At a time known only to Allah, the preserved prophet descends, his form clear, his presence undeniable. Fact 3. It is narrated that his return will take place near a white minaret in the eastern part of Damascus, wearing garments that seem untouched by the dust of earth, and the people who see him will know without a doubt who he is. His mission will not be to bring a new religion. Fact 4. He will affirm the truth of Islam, the final message revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and he will lead with the same humility that marked his first life on earth. His return will unite believers, dissolve divisions, and shatter the illusions that the false Messiah used to control minds. Fact 5. His role will extend beyond confrontation. Once the false Messiah is defeated by the will of Allah, he will oversee a period of peace so profound that even the natural world will reflect it. Predators and prey will coexist without harm. Wealth will lose its meaning, and justice will be the rule rather than the exception. But this peace is not the end, it is a respite before the next great trial. During this time, the other living prophets will also have roles to fulfill. Fact 6. Their missions will intersect in ways the world has never seen, each contributing exactly what the divine plan requires. Some will guide in secret, others will act openly, but all will be moving toward the same conclusion: the closing of humanity's story. His presence will silence the doubts of those who question the unseen. Fact 7. The Hadith described that when people witness him in the flesh, disbelief will have no excuse except stubborn rejection. His miracles will not be spectacles for entertainment but signs of truth, restoring what the false Messiah corrupted. And yet, for all the glory of his return, he will remain humble. Fact 8. When the time comes for prayer, he will not lead in front of the Imam of the Muslims, but will pray behind him, affirming that the final messenger's leadership remains until the end of time. This act alone will seal the unity of the believers. The return written in the stars is not far in the sense of divine timing. It may be years or centuries by human measure, but in the scale of eternity, it is near. Somewhere now, as night falls in one part of the world and morning rises in another, the prophet waits in the state Allah has kept him, knowing the next time his feet touch the earth will be the moment history bends toward its conclusion. The countdown continues even as the world carries on unaware. The air was different that morning, not just in one place, but across distant lands where the five still lived, each in their hidden corner of the world. Fact 1. In Islamic belief, events of the end times will draw together people and forces long kept apart, and among them will be the prophets preserved for these very moments. Their missions, once separate, will begin to align like pieces of a design that has existed since before the first human walked the earth. Far in the east, a man walked along a quiet path, unseen by those around him. His steps were measured, his mind already turning toward a place he had not visited in centuries. Fact 2. The living prophets are not bound by ordinary human movement, for Allah allows them to be exactly where they must be, at exactly the right time, without obstacle. This is why no one has been able to follow their trails or map their routes. In another land, a river shimmered under a pale light, and the one who drank from the water of life paused mid-step. Fact 3. Such figures do not need to be summoned by human voice. Their call comes directly from the will of Allah. In that moment, though they were worlds apart, each of the five knew the same truth: the time for isolation was ending. Somewhere near a mountain ridge, the king who had once ruled from horizon to horizon looked toward the west. Fact 4. His barrier against Gog and Magog still stood, but the signs of its weakening were becoming clear to him. He knew the appointed hour of its fall would not arrive without the alignment of all who had been preserved. His journeys across the world had taught him how quickly chaos could spread, and now the unseen preparation began again. The silent guardian, who had watched through centuries without recognition, stepped from the place he had been keeping. Fact 5. Unlike the others, his work had often been tied to small but critical interventions, guiding certain people whose descendants would one day be key in the final events. Now, his role was shifting toward direct presence alongside the others. And high above, in a realm beyond human reach, the one destined to return and confront the greatest deceiver looked down upon the earth. Fact 6. His awareness of the world was not dulled by his time away from it. He could see the spread of corruption, the rise of arrogance, and the despair of those clinging to faith. When the command came, he would descend, and the five would be in position for the unfolding of the last chapters of human history. Fact 7. There is no record in Islamic tradition of all five standing together before the final events, but there are strong indications that their missions will overlap, each strengthening the other's purpose. The man of the river will prepare the chosen with wisdom. The guardian will anchor them with steadfastness. The king will bring the strength of righteous leadership. The first preserved prophet will embody endurance, and the one who returns will lead the confrontation with falsehood. The world will not see their gathering at first. Fact 8. The unseen is a shield as much as it is a mystery. If their presence were revealed too early, forces of corruption would seek to twist it or destroy those who recognized it. Only when the appointed trials begin will their existence be undeniable. Even now, as we speak, their movements may already be underway, quiet shifts in direction, unseen journeys toward locations whose importance is known only to them. Fact 9. The believers who live in those days will recognize the signs not through dreams or vague feelings, but through events so clear that denial will be impossible. The gathering of the five is not the end of the story, it is the beginning of the conclusion. Somewhere tonight, 5 lives that have spanned centuries are turning toward the same horizon, knowing that when they meet, the final age will have begun. It began with a storm over a city that had not seen rain in years. A storm so sudden and fierce that people stopped in the streets just to watch the sky break open. Fact 1. In Islamic belief, the movements of the preserved prophets are often marked by events that seem natural to most, but carry deeper meaning for those attuned to the signs. In that city, a man found himself speaking words he had never planned to say, guiding a group away from a path that would have led to disaster. The man vanished before they could thank him, and somewhere far away, another prophet knew his work had been completed. In the north, a river overflowed its banks, washing away a path that an army had intended to use. Fact 2. The one who drank from the water of life does not only offer guidance in words, sometimes his presence changes the course of events themselves, shifting what is possible and what is not. Those who saw him on the riverbank swore he was gone the moment they blinked, leaving only footprints in the wet sand. Far to the west, a king without a crown walked into a tense gathering between rival factions. Fact 3. His leadership was not bound by borders, and though centuries had passed since his reign, the authority Allah granted him remained. He spoke, and those who moments earlier had prepared for war laid down their weapons. This was no accident, it was the same unseen coordination now moving across the earth. The silent guardian made his presence known in a place where the truth was about to be buried under lies. Fact 4. His role has always been to anchor certain events so they do not collapse into chaos. And in this moment, he ensured that a single document, containing knowledge needed in the final age, survived when it should have been lost forever. No one there understood the weight of what had been saved, but across the world, another of the 5 did. And high above, in the realm of preservation, the one destined to return watched as these threads wove together. Fact 5. The prophets do not need to speak directly to coordinate their actions. Allah is the one who aligns their steps, ensuring that each is where they must be without delay or error. Fact 6. These moments were not yet their open gathering, but they were the prelude. Each act, each intervention set the stage for events that would ripple outward until no part of the earth remained untouched. What appeared to be isolated miracles or coincidences were in truth part of the same unfolding mission. In a coastal village, fishermen reported seeing a man they could not describe clearly, who warned them to move their boats inland just before a massive wave struck. Fact 7. Such interventions are often forgotten by history, remembered only by those directly saved, yet they form the silent backbone of the divine plan. Elsewhere, a group of scholars debated a matter that would shape how the next generation understood their faith. A stranger among them posed a single question that changed the course of the discussion, leading them to an answer they had overlooked for years. Fact 8. Wisdom can arrive in a sentence, and the prophets still alive carry that wisdom in abundance. By nightfall, across every continent, there had been moments like this, small to those living them, enormous in their combined effect. Fact 9. The end times will not arrive in a sudden instant without preparation. The living prophets are part of that preparation, shaping the flow of history so that when the decisive days come, the believers will be ready. And so the five moved, not in the same place, not yet in the same sight of each other, but as one force guided by the will of Allah. They knew the meeting was near, the world did not. The night was darker than usual, the stars hidden behind a sky so heavy it felt like the air was holding a secret. And in a place unmarked on any map, 5 figures stood together for the first time in centuries. Fact 1. In Islamic belief, the gathering of prophets for a shared mission is rare, and when it happens, it is for an event written long before the world began. This was not a meeting of introductions. They each knew the others without a word spoken, their recognition placed in their hearts by Allah Himself. The first of them stepped forward, the one preserved from before the flood, his face calm but his eyes carrying the memory of humanity's earliest trials. Fact 2. Each of these prophets carries within him the history of his own people, the lessons of his mission, and the divine trust to complete what remains unfinished. They did not gather here to reminisce, but to prepare for the phase of history that would begin with their united action. Beside him stood the man of the river, the one who drank from the water of life, his presence quiet yet commanding. Fact 3. His wisdom was not just knowledge but a living connection to the unseen workings of Allah's will, a perspective no ordinary human could share. His role here was to ensure their plan aligned perfectly with the divine timeline. The king without a crown took his place, his gaze sweeping the horizon as though he could see beyond the mountains that encircled them. Fact 4. His leadership was as natural as breathing, his voice able to unite warriors or pacify enemies. In this gathering, his strength would anchor their combined presence, holding steady the course they were about to take. The silent guardian was there too, watching as he always had, measuring the moment. Fact 5. His mission throughout history had been to protect the key details that would make this meeting possible: names, places, truths that might have been erased by time if not for his intervention. Now, with all 5 here, his vigilance turned towards safeguarding what they would do next. And then came the one from the highest realm, the one destined to return in the sight of all. Fact 6. His presence was a sign in itself, for until now he had remained apart from the earth. His joining them here meant that the countdown toward his descent had moved closer than ever. They did not speak in the way people expect. Fact 7. The prophets are connected through a form of understanding beyond language, where meaning is shared without sound. In this moment, they exchanged the knowledge of where they had been, what they had seen, and what must happen next. No debate, no hesitation, each already knew his part. Fact 8. The events they discussed would ripple across the world in ways that could not be traced back to them. Cities would be spared destruction. Leaders would make choices that altered the fate of nations, and the believers would find strength in moments they thought they could not endure. All of this would be the result of what began here. When the meeting ended, they did not leave together. Fact 9. Their unity did not require proximity. Each would return to his place, moving unseen until the moment came for the open fulfillment of their roles. This was the balanced, complete harmony, without the need for constant visibility. The valley where they had stood fell silent again, as though nothing had happened. But in truth, the most important gathering in centuries had just taken place, and the earth itself seemed to know that something in its story had shifted forever. The wind carried a sound that was not quite thunder and not quite silence, a vibration in the air that seemed to reach into the bones of every living creature. Fact 1. In Islamic belief, the last age of the world will unfold with events that leave no doubt in the hearts of the believers and no escape for the deniers. The 5 prophets, preserved across centuries, will each stand in their appointed place as those final moments draw near. In the east, the one preserved from before the flood will walk among a people on the verge of collapse. Fact 2. His endurance is not only a sign, but a gift to those who witness him, for he will remind them of the unbroken line of guidance that has stretched from the first prophet to the last. His presence will turn wavering hearts towards steadfastness, even in the face of trials that seem unbearable. By the river of life, its guardian will speak words to a group destined for the most dangerous mission of the age. Fact 3. His wisdom will not reveal every detail, for part of their strength will come from trust in Allah rather than in knowledge of the future. Yet his guidance will be exact, shaping their choices so they fulfill what was decreed long before they were born. The king will rise from his place of concealment, his steps carrying him to the location where the barrier of Gog and Magog has begun to break. Fact 4. The Quran speaks of that barrier's destruction as a sign of the approaching day, and when it happens, his leadership will be the rallying point for the believers who must face the chaos that follows. He will not lead from behind walls, but from the front lines, proving again that justice and courage are inseparable. The silent guardian will move through the world with a swiftness unseen. Fact 5. His role will be to protect those whose survival is essential to the divine plan, even if it means intervening in battles, disasters, or places of great deception. The people he saves may never know who he is, but their existence will be the key to what happens next. And then the sky will open. Fact 6. The one preserved in the highest realm will descend, just as the hadith describe, near a white minaret in Damascus, the light upon him dispelling the last shreds of doubt from the hearts of the faithful. He will join the believers in their struggle against the false Messiah, and by the will of Allah, the deceiver will fall. This will mark not the end of his work, but the beginning of a brief era of peace, unlike any in human memory. Fact 7. During this time, the 5 will still walk the earth, ensuring that the foundations of truth remain strong even as the world moves toward its final test. Their roles will be quiet again, yet every action will ripple into the unfolding of the last decree. Eventually, the peace will end. The release of Gog and Magog, the final trumpet, and the gathering of all souls will follow, as Allah has promised. Fact 8. The prophets are not eternal. Their preservation is for their mission, and when it is done, they too will return to Allah, as all creation must. What will remain is the memory of their presence in the hearts of those who stood in their time, the unshakable knowledge that even in the final age, The mercy of Allah placed guidance directly among His servants. Fact 9. Their stories are not meant to be distant history or mere legend. They are a reminder that the unseen is as real as the ground beneath our feet. And so, as the last moments of the world draw near, the five take their places. The winds shift, the sky holds its breath, and the earth waits for the sound that will signal the end of time and the beginning of what comes after.